Go.
Good morning and welcome to CosmoQuest. It is Monday, August 24th, in the year that shall not be named thus forth. This is CosmoQuest, and it's Community Coffee. I just said it was CosmoQuest, and I am your host, Gillian Rhodes, and I am waking up as we talk. I have my coffee with me. Bring your coffee, your beverages, your whatever it is in the time zone that you happen to be in, and join us for a Monday morning talking about astronomy and art and all of the ways that they fuse and fission and make some beautiful things. I'm here every Monday doing this. I have different people with me. And today I have a wonderful guest who I was connected to from a previous guest. She's a planetary scientist and choreographer, and has spoken extensively in the various TEDx and around about space exploration and cultural use of space. So please say hello to my guest, Adeene. Hello, how are you?
Hello, doing all right. It's a lovely sunny morning in West Lafayette, Indiana.
It is, I think it's a Sunday morning in Spokane Valley, which is where I am currently. Normally I'm here, I have the evening side because I'm on the other side of the world, and so it's in the evening time. So I've had many of time to be awake, and this morning, no time at all. Just quickly, I just saw some bits coming through from Fenwil, so I owe a happy dance. This is how I thank people for their bits and their subscriptions. So let's just pop into the interview without further ado. So, Dean, can you just kind of quickly give us a background on you and your work? You are studying Pluto.
Yes, I am. So I'm currently a fifth-year PhD student here at Purdue University. Being a fifth-year PhD student mostly means that people start conversations with me saying, "When will you graduate?" And I say, "Oh, that's a really good question." And then we change the subject. Over the course of my PhD, though, I began studying Mars and studying the early climate history of Mars. Very topical right now with the rover launch, but life is magical. I discovered the wonderful world of impact cratering and how massive planetary scale impacts, like the one that killed the dinosaurs, can be used as a really, really intense probe for what's going on underneath the surface of different planets. And now I study Pluto, and I study Pluto either the hard way or the fun way, depending on how you think about it and how you approach research. But basically, Pluto, incredible world that back in 2015, when New Horizons saw Pluto for the first time, and also for the last time, unless we send an orbiter. Please send an orbiter, NASA. Thank you.
Thank you in advance very much. Okay, bye-bye.
Then the whole world decided, wow, Pluto is actually excellent, and I was one of those people.
Right.
Pluto has a giant heart that features in most of the images. We're so fortunate that Pluto turned out to be so incredibly photogenic.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, no one really knew if it was, going to be boring or not. We all hoped it wouldn't be boring, and it turned out to be incredible.
Yeah.
The work I do is actually studying the heart, which is known as Sputnik Planitia, and it's believed to be a massive impact basin. So I get to use my favorite technique, which is to simulate and re-simulate the formation of that impact basin and look at how the formation of Pluto's heart can tell us about the subsurface structure of the dwarf planet itself, whether it has an ocean, what composition its core is made out of, and whether that might tell us about conditions for habitability in these super distant Kuiper Belt objects.
Cool. But so, and not only though are you, hardcore studying planetary scientists and Pluto and all this kind of stuff, but you're also an artist, a dancer, and choreographer. So I just want to talk about that for a little bit. Like, how does that work? How do you balance them? When we spoke before this, you mentioned that you try to keep like the subjects that you work on for dance and choreography are separate basically from the research that you're doing. So just like how do you balance these two things in your life? Do they inform each other? Do you keep them really separate? Like how does that work?
It's kind of a complicated question, right? Because I think I do really do my best to try to keep them separate simply because if I thought about my PhD work for 24 hours a day, I would explode and be of no use to anyone. But also, dance is a way for me to dance, and like the act of choreography is so incredibly physical while my research is so incredibly trapped in my body typing at a keyboard, Googling various debugging related things. Um, when I dance and when I make work, I'm exploring my relationship to my environment in very much the same way to me that I'm exploring my relationship to the solar system in my research, but it's both a completely different set of tools that I'm using to explore, and I'm focused on different aspects of it. So a lot of my dance these days has been focused kind of in like a similar vein, in that lately I've been thinking about how you could represent geologic processes with the human body, and how human space exploration in particular, rather than like robotic space exploration, how that has impacted my life and exploring that through dance. So kind of related, kind of not related. I think I end up inspiring myself in one aspect of my life, either the choreographic aspect or the science aspect, and vice versa.
Okay. Yeah, and that you segued very nicely into my next question. Thank you very much for that. So which is basically that, it's just interesting that as a practitioner, you're kind of trying to keep them separate for the sake of your sanity, but also at the same time, they're informing each other, they're kind of helping each other, and they're related to each other. So, but generally speaking, science and the arts are kind of kept away from each other. Like you're a scientist or you're an artist, like you're this the woo woo crazy creative person, or you're like the hard facts person. And so what do you think, like how do you think that these two can be more integrated with each other, and really why should we kind of work to put these things together?
Oh man. First of all, yes, it is. I think it is incredibly crucial to bring science and the arts closer together, because right now I think we're doing everyone such a disservice by building this kind of false dichotomy where you are a scientist kind of person or you're an artist kind of person, and you're really forcing people into these, weird boxes that don't really have a basis in reality. I don't really, it's not like I, turn off a switch and say, aha, I'm a scientist now, haha, when I open my computer, instead of, go into the dance studio. Uh, it's always been kind of, the farther I get in both my dance career and my scientific career, the stranger it is to me, because I think uh, my research really benefits from the really physical way that I think about how the world works, because as dancers, we have to be so aware of our bodies and where they are in space, and how I'm placing myself. And I think that really informs like all aspects of my research, from experimental design and knowing where things have to be in the code, but also when I'm processing my data and thinking about, okay, how is Pluto deforming? How is it moving? I really visualize it in a very physical way, and vice versa. When I'm thinking about, oh God, okay, Pluto has this ice shell and it's super thick, and how does it move? And I return to my dance practice and I think, okay, well, how could I embody that? So super beneficial in both aspects. In terms of how can they be better integrated, honestly, my answer to that is super informed by the fact that I live and operate in an academic system. So my answer is going to be, haha, within the academy, we can do a much better job of actually standing behind the concept of interdisciplinary work, which is a buzzword that people really, really like to use and drag out there and form new institutes about. But when it comes to actually going, you know, much farther into interdisciplinary work and really pairing science and the arts, we haven't really gotten there yet. And I think it's something I hope to explore going forward in my career, but that's something that universities really have to literally buy into with dollars and support. And I mean, I think like people like you and I are making scientific art or artistic science by ourselves, doing the work as freelance people for fun, for exposure, whatever. And I think that's really beautiful, and we're building a really beautiful community. But until I don't think we can really transform the idea of science and the idea of art without integrating it into the educational systems that teach people these ideas and that like build the dichotomy in the first place.
That's brilliant. I love it. We're gonna go on, but there's we're gonna just go back for a second. Somebody in the chat was asking. I think you kind of answered it here and there, but she was asking to elaborate how you study impact basins, if it's computer modeling, or do you throw rocks in flour, etc. I
When
just love that.
when I do outreach work with children, I absolutely do throw rocks and flour. But what I do is I highly recommend doing this with your kids because I am not a child, but I do it to this day. If you have flour and then you add a layer of cocoa powder on top, that really simulates the idea of, well, because they're two different colors, right? So it simulates the idea of a crust and a mantle of different compositions. And when you drop your rock, your tennis ball, whatever, you get this beautiful rayed crater, like the super fresh craters we see on the moon right now. It is gorgeous. It makes me so happy. It's an incredible learning tool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not what I do. People that do experimental work with impact craters today use massive guns that can accelerate very small particles to 6 kilometers per second. And that's at like NASA Ames, for example, they have a gun. It's a light gas gun. I don't do that work. I study massive basins, right? Sputnik Planitia is 1,200 by 2,000 kilometers across.
Wow.
It's like 15% of Pluto by surface area. So it covers a significant portion of the body, and not everything scales up. So I use computer codes that are designed to handle most of the physics associated with impacts. It's great. I basically code all the time.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I was just thinking about this, like all the different physical ways to play around with it. I don't think they would be very scientific, but like the image in my mind is, the pile of leaves, just crashing into the pile of leaves. I don't think that would be very useful, but it'd be really fun. Anyway.
Sometimes science should just be fun. So I think there's value in it.
Great. So I just want to kind of talk a little bit more about your choreography for a minute.
Sure.
You've recently, I don't know about how recent is recent, but the recent photos on your website or videos are more about space exploration. And I know that when we talked before, you have these very sort of profound ideas and thoughts on space exploration and what it means to you particularly. So I just want to talk a little bit about like where you kind of got the idea for these choreographies and the space exploration and et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. So if you go to my website, you will see two of the most recent pieces I did were a solo that I made for the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, and then a group work that I made thinking about the Apollo program as a whole. And they're two different pieces that are exploring the same idea, which is yeah, if the accent did not give it away, I am American, and I think growing up, uh, space exploration, human space exploration, and the Apollo program in particular was just such a fundamental part of my life because it's really been built into the mythos of what it means to be American. And growing up in South Texas, close to the Johnson Space Center, um, you know, when I was a kid, the space shuttle was on Texas license plates. I was very immersed in the idea of space exploration as a thing that we did, and it always felt super profound to me. And also, it's a very complicated thing, right? Because space exploration doesn't make anyone's lives uh, fundamentally better. I mean, it inspires us all. It makes us uh, think about the universe in a new way, but it's not really going to fix anything. And yet, I remain so captivated by it. And when the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 came around, I wanted to re-explore what that means. And you know, now that it's been 50 years since we first set foot on the moon, and uh, in some ways we've moved quite a bit forward, in some ways we haven't. You know, we haven't actually gone back, and there's a huge amount of reasons for that. But I still remain so tied to, like, there's the Apollo myth, and then there's, you know, the reality of what the Apollo program was like and how it's centered in, you know, socio-political, Cold War, et cetera, nationalism. And the part of the Apollo myth, as I was making these pieces, I was trying to pick apart what it was about the myth of the Apollo program that really stood out to me. And it's really the idea that I just love teamwork. I just love it so much. And the idea of so many people coming together to make this work is amazing to me. It's not the idea of one man setting foot on the moon. It's the thousands of people that, you know, walked with him. And that was what I wanted to explore. Why it captures all of us is because ultimately the idea that together you can surpass insurmountable odds is a really, really cool concept. And that the idea that if you do that, and then the prize is that you don't win anything, you just get to see something beautiful. You just get to see the moon rise over the earth rise over the limb of the moon, and that's what you get. And yeah, it's beautiful to me. And so I'm still exploring what that means going forward, right? Because space exploration, it just looks different now. We've got commercial companies, we've got NASA trying to figure out what exactly its plan is going forward. But I think there's a real space for reimagining what space exploration could be that centers around that collaborative aspect that I think has captured so many people, and not just me.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, yeah, you know, there is something about that, because when you, like, putting aside some of the narratives, you know, of recent days, but definitely when you think about the idea of space exploration, it's more about humanity and less about, you know, single things happening, which is quite interesting. And so speaking of that, I was playing around on your website the other day, and I saw this um, thing, and I thought it was really interesting. I actually didn't get a chance to ask you about it when we were talking last time. But basically, you are the co-director of the Ethics and Human Rights, I think maybe Committee for the Space Sector Project. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, what is that, and what does it encompass, and the projects that you're working on? So it's fascinating.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm so happy you brought that up. For anyone who's interested, we do have a Twitter. So the Space Generation Advisory Council is a group that spun off from the UN, and it's supposed to incorporate early career professionals at all stages in their career, from academia to the commercial sector, who are interested in the future of space exploration on a global scale. So that's the Space Generation Advisory Council as a whole. And what I do, I'm one of the co-directors of one of their project groups. Myself and a PhD sociologist came together to found this group because I think we both think that one of the things that's really missing in our discussions of space exploration going forward is ethics and human rights. And I think that might sound kind of intense if, just saying that. Our Twitter is SJC_EHR, so ethics and human rights. Please look us up and talk to us. We would love to talk to you. But I think right now we're in this phase of human exploration where people talk about, colonizing Mars, building new societies on other planets. And there hasn't been a lot of talk about really the ethical side of that. First of all, the pervasive language of colonization, of using I see this all the time in space media, especially talking about new robotic missions that repurposes the voyages of discovery and Western colonization as a positive thing for space exploration, when it was not actually a net positive thing in our history. And the goal of the ethics and human rights group that I work with is to center conversations about what we want the future of space exploration to look like in a way where it's actually inclusive, where when we think about, we go to Mars, we go to the moon, we try to build a society. Well, what kind of society do you want to build? What values do you want to take with you? And what do you want to change? And I don't think it's too early to think about those things, because it really, if you're thinking about living on Mars, one of the first things that you should think about is how you'll do it, not just logistically, but on a person-to-person level. Right. So that's what that group is about. And some of the projects we're working on right now are to first order building a reading list for people who are interested in this concept, because ethics and human rights is something that academics are talking about, but it tends to be coming from a very jargony social sciences, humanities type place. A lot of philosophy of science is in there, and it can be a little bit difficult. So what we're doing is sifting through the literature and trying to pull from all sorts of different people who are thinking about this question, so that we can be a resource for people in their quest to learn more about this. So that's, I would say, the main project that I'm involved with right now.
Okay. It's really fascinating. I mean, I would agree with you that it's not too early at all. In fact, in some ways, I think it's already too late,
There's an argument to be made for that.
Well, that's very cool. And so the kind of just kind of as a follow-up question to that, so what's the vision on, like, what would you like to see that become, that project, that advisory console, your part in it? Like, what kind of would you like to see in that, in the future?
That's an interesting question. And the reason that I'm slow to answer is because I don't want to be super radical on Maine. But let me see if I can frame this in a decent way for you. I think this project group exists because we want this, because people are having this discussion, and they are absolutely having it in ways that are brilliant. The Decolonizing Mars conference 2 years ago points to the fact that this is a priority for some people, but the fact is it's not a priority for the people with power to make decisions about space exploration right now. Right now, space exploration exists as the purview of national governments and the commercial space sector. And for better or for worse, that is what human space exploration is right now, is something that's done by those two groups. Right. And I think a lot of people younger than me, actually, who grew up in a time when the ISS was always inhabited, when the actual monument to international collaboration in space always flew above them, have a very different view of how space exploration should be relative to the, the hands down facts of what it's actually like right now, uh, which is a vision of an international collaborative future, um, that manages to somehow break down, the nationalist barriers, the issues with commercial space exploration that I don't feel necessarily qualified to get into here. And
Yes,
if,
certainly.
if anyone wants to tell me that that vision was, super broad and that I didn't actually provide a path as to how to get there, you're right, I can't. The goal of the group for right now is to basically just provide another platform to have these discussions, to bring in the commercial space people and talk about, well, who is space really for and why do you want to go?
Oh,
Um, I think a lot of space is really this, it's not just a vacuum. It's not just rocks that I like to study, and I'm happy that I get to study them, and I'm happy that NASA funds me to do so. But it's also such a huge part of the American mythos that we need to be able to unpack what we're projecting onto space exploration and think about the flaws in that,
sure.
um, and how we can, do better in general going forward. I don't
Right.
know. I don't think that was any more specific, actually. Does that kind of answer your
No,
question?
I mean, I wasn't looking for anything particular. I was just kind of extrapolating. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think it's an important discussion to have, and I'm glad that you guys have that platform to not just to discuss about it, but to try, to have a place where people can educate themselves. I think that's just really important. So what's next for you? I mean, I'm sure you're just trying to graduate within the next 5 years. So what's next? What are you doing? And where can people go to find you if they want to, learn more about your work?
Sure. I'll answer the easier question first, which is where can you find me? My website is adeenedenton.com. Feel free to hop on the website, see what I'm working on. I host some of my more recent choreography on there too. So if you want to take a look at some of the dances that I've made, it's there. Go on and check it out and then drop me a line if you want to talk to me about it. I am on Twitter at Space Whale Writer. But if you Google me, it'll also pop up. I'm on Instagram at Adeene D. So that's pretty much it. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, but as an academic, we don't really use LinkedIn particularly often. This is also true for the dance world. Not a single dance person has ever reached out to me over LinkedIn. That is where you can find me, and I'm always happy to talk with you. In terms of what's next, what a question to try to answer right now during the pandemic. I mean, really, I feel like probably every interview, podcast, discussion that people have right now circles back to the pandemic, but it certainly informs my idea of what jobs will be like going forward. What I can tell you is that I'm currently funded by NASA for the rest of my PhD work to, keep blowing up Pluto on my computer, which is a pleasure and an honor, truly. Um, so I will be doing that for a little while. When I graduate, I plan to continue doing science in some aspect. I think using this technique and using large impact basins as a probe for the subsurface of different worlds is, I don't know. I mean, on one level, it's Fortran code that I hate and love, but also it's, I think, a really profound mechanism that can be applied to so many different places. So I'm thinking a lot about how I can help out with upcoming NASA missions and thinking about other icy worlds in the solar system that we're still struggling to understand what they are, what they're like under the surface, and that's Europa and the Europa Clipper mission, and Titan, Saturn's moon Titan, and the Dragonfly mission, and thinking about how I can help NASA out going forward. In terms of dance, I will make dance for as long as I can, as long as I'm able to find a platform to find people willing to work with me, I will keep making dance because it's such an important part of my life and who I am as a person. Uh, Dance is funny because unless you're really immersed in it, it's difficult to make any money at all. So it's entirely something that I do because I think I have things to say that can only be said using the medium of dance, and I will keep doing that for as long as I can. I'm I will probably be continuing to explore space exploration that vein through dance for at least a couple more pieces, probably. Uh, just because I'm not quite done figuring that out. And I don't bring my research into my work a lot because I don't want to. But the last time we talked, I said, I'm really interested in how you can represent an impact crater with the human body, other than the classic what I just did.
Yes.
Uh, so I'm still thinking about that, and I would like to figure out how to do that. So that's the other dance project that I'm working on right now. If anyone wants to work with me on dance, please contact me. I think it's a bit difficult to make dance right now, honestly. Solos in the living room and such off of a computer webcam. Um, I think there's a lot of value in it, but I also think it's exhausting, and I don't know, a lot of dance people that I've talked to have been kind of trying to figure out what dance means right now and how it can be meaningful to other people in this time, and I'm still trying to figure that out. Assuming the pandemic ends, I will continue to make dance with other people in the Chicago area. But right now it's very much like making dance in my house, like everyone else.
Right. Okay. So that's awesome. I'm just looking through the chat. Guys, if you have questions for Adeene, put them in the chat. I've seen a couple. But there's also FanMail is just like gifting subs all over the place, and some people have been following. And so I do I have to give you a few happy dances because I've seen that. So thank you guys so much for following and subbing. That is how we keep going with all of the science at CosmoQuest. So there's a few questions. Andy has said he just wanted to say thanks for bringing up this topic about ethics because he's been thinking about it. Glad someone is bringing it up. AstroWise was saying, have you had feedback from other scientists about your dance? Or if it's helped them think about their work in a different way or anything like that?
Sorry, I'm thinking about whether I want to give a realistic answer or a nice answer. I'll give you both. The nice answer is that yes, I think it's given some of the scientists that I talk to. These scientists are my friends. They are nonetheless scientists.
That counts. That counts.
No. The scientists that I have shown my works to have definitely seen the value in it, not just as an artistic process, but as a different way to visualize like physical processes. Because the solo that I made, if you want to check it out, no worries if not, was very much built around like, how can I represent the different components of solar system formation in my body? So I was very much focused on like planetesimal formation in like gestural work and that kind of stuff. And I think that that really captured a lot of people, because for those of us who computer modeling, and most of the people that think about solar system formation, giant impacts, the people that I talk to and work with you can get very divorced from the idea of the physical processes you're studying and just get lost in my Fortran code. And I'm also guilty of this. So I think it has helped some people recenter their ideas in the physical world. The realistic answer is that I don't always show this to a lot of people because I'm an academic. And to have an outside interest like this that one puts a lot of effort into is unfortunately in many places still considered to be a detriment to your career. So I disagree with that. I don't think it should be. But for this reason, it's not something that I can bring to, say, a scientific conference as much as I would like to. And while it is something that, I am working to change, this goes back to what Gillian and I were talking about earlier about, the separation between art and science. I think it remains difficult. That is a transition that is happening right now. And yeah, it's difficult, but when people are in a space, when scientists are in a space where they can and are willing to receive the art, they realize its value.
But otherwise, yeah. It's Gillian, by the way, but that's okay. Everybody does that. It's okay. Everybody does that. So just a couple more questions, and we'll try it. We'll try it, and then we'll wrap this up. But someone was asking if you're planning to do ZeroG dance when you can.
I have no money. I get paid so little. Is my answer to that question. Oh man, the graduate.
If money were no object, would you be?
Oh yeah, totally. Yes. I do know someone who has done ZeroG dance who did, fly in the vomit comet and get to explore.
That's Adam, right?
Yeah, Adam got to do that, and I'm so happy for him. I simply do not have the funds to do it myself, but I would really like to do ZeroG dance. Instead, I'm limited to, and honestly, I think there's this is going to be a huge tangent, but I want to answer your question. I actually think it's more valuable for us, like people interested in, the evolution of dance into space exploration, to look at how astronauts move on the International Space Station and how they choreograph their space.
Right.
I mean, really, because they've developed an understanding of their bodies and their bodies in three-dimensional space that I simply cannot develop on something like the Vomit Comet, on 15 seconds of ZeroG. It's much more interesting, I think, to explore the idea of ZeroG dance through looking at someone who's learned how to move in zero gravity for 6 months, who can hook onto one of the bars of the ISS with their toes and use that as leverage to move in a way that we simply can't do and can't imagine. And if you watch some of the fun things that astronauts do on the ISS, they are choreographing their space and they are choreographing their bodies. And I think it is super cool. But I think if we really want to think about ZeroG dance, longer term exposure is the way to really develop an understanding of what that's going to look like. Okay. I would really love to do it though. Send me to the ISS. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, there's just one last question, and honestly, this is a rabbit hole question. So we'll try not to get too much in a rabbit hole. But basically, I think this is how you pronounce it. Wolfenstein was saying, I would like to listen to her opinion about private sector, Elon Musk, space exploration, and ethics. So if you have an opinion on all of that.
I have an opinion on that, but I haven't locked my Twitter yet, so
maybe just a short, a quiet.
So I think currently I have issues with the private sector. I'm sure that was obvious from my previous statements about it. It is not that I think there's no value in it, and also, of course, the private sector has been a part of space exploration since the beginning. Northrop has been there. North American companies have been contracted to work on space missions since the Apollo era. There is value in it. I would say my main problem with the space exploration industry as it currently stands is this hero mode of exploration that these companies espouse, and these companies being centered on the concept of one great man, the Elon Musk figure, the Jeff Bezos figure, as these figureheads and these representations for what the future of space exploration is going to be. And that is what I simply just don't agree with. And that's not just because, Elon Musk says things like we should nuke the ice caps of Mars to give Mars an atmosphere, which I also don't agree with, and it won't work. But that everything I've said in this talk to date has been about a collaborative future that centers, humanity as a whole, and the hero mode centered on a rich white man simply isn't it. These companies have immense value and they could be doing immense good, but I think the current structure and the way that they interact, like their social role right now, is could use some tweaking,
Yes. All right. We're gonna leave it at that. We're gonna box that up, put a bow on it, and leave it. I think that was lovely, and it was a nice little summary. I think that was great. So with that, I will say goodbye. Thank you everybody for watching, for your subs, for your gift subs, for your follows, all of this. This is how we do science. Please come back in an hour and 45 minutes for the Daily Space, which is your daily science news roundup. And that is on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Wednesday is Rocket Roundup. And make sure to see all of the links coming up in the chat right now about how you can get involved and support CosmoQuest. Thank you, huge thank you to my guest, Adeene. Thank you for being here, and you're just lovely to talk to you as always.
Thank you, and thank you for all of the questions that I received from your listeners. Some very good questions, and I really appreciate getting to talk to you about this stuff.
Definitely. Yes, come back in a little bit for Daily Space, and have a good insert time zone here. And we'll see you next week for more astro art. Bye-bye.